So maybe you visited the beautiful Emerald Coast and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I might want to buy a condo while I'm out there. Seems like a pretty good investment. Well, these are going to be the top 29 things you absolutely must know before purchasing a condo here in Florida, particularly here on the Emerald Coast. Let's talk about it. What is going on? My name is Andrew. I am with the Emerald Group at eXp Realty. I'm located right here along the beautiful Emerald Coast. And in today's video, we're going to be breaking down everything you need to know. This is going to be a full guide for you for anything to do with condos and purchasing them here in our area. Now, please keep in mind, we do several videos every single week showcasing off the entire area. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit that little subscribe button and you've got to tap that little bell next to it so that it'll actually notify you whenever we drop our videos. Now, if you are even kind of thinking about buying a condo, vacation home, or really any property along the Emerald Coast, all of our information is on the screen. We would really love to help. We can get you in touch with either myself or one of my specialists for exactly what you were looking for, and we can help. Now, let's go ahead and get right into the 29 things you absolutely must know before buying a condo here on the Emerald Coast. First and foremost, why would you even buy a condo on the Emerald Coast? There's so many other places to buy. There's Miami, there's Tampa, there's other states, there's California. There's all sorts of places to buy a condo. And what would be the reason why the Emerald Coast of Florida would be the place you'd want to call home? Or, I guess, second home. Well, according to a study by rented.com, who used two different research platforms to figure out where the best places to buy a vacation condo would be, or vacation property in general, the Emerald Coast was actually ranked number 1 out of the entire country for 2020. Now, they did not have a 2021 study out yet, or else I would have used that number. But the Emerald Coast is a fantastic place to buy a vacation condo. We've got tons of them out here. There are a lot of them cash flow, a lot of them bringing a lot of money. And of course, once you see our beautiful beaches, if you haven't already, it's very hard to pass up. We've got a very unique sand in our area that only stretches along the Emerald Coast. And of course, our waters, you can see our color waters in a lot of other places in Florida, but it is still very unique for most beach areas in general. So it's a very unique experience, a very unique beach, and that's why so many people flock here every year. All right, the second thing that you really need to watch out for is figuring out exactly how much you can afford. This is not like buying a home where there's not other expenses. As you'll see in next week's video, I'm going to completely break down an entire condo and show you absolutely everything that goes into it. There's HOA dues, there's miscellaneous fees, there's hidden fees, there's sometimes a fitness thing and another expense for using the internet, and another expense, obviously there's internet utilities, things like that. But I mean, there's a lot of other fees that could go into this. So just looking at a baseline price might not give you the best idea of what it's going to be like to purchase the condo and actually the cost of ownership of that condo. And another thing that goes with that budget would be making sure that you're comfortable if the condo stops cash flowing. There are things like COVID. It shut us down for, I think it was like 6 to 9 weeks or something like that, where condos couldn't rent, couldn't let people in or out. And then of course we have an off season every single year. Some condo complexes have snowbirds. It's what we call them, people that come in during the slow season and they rent out for months or sometimes weeks at a time, but it's generally months at a time. And it's generally people trying to escape a colder climate coming down here during the November, December, January, February, March sort of months, and that can offset those costs. But not every condo has regular snowbirds in them, so sometimes there is a 4-month period where you got all of the carrying costs. And with that, looking at the overall picture, another thing you need to know is that there might be a special assessment on any condo that you purchase, and you might not even know about it. Now, if the owner knows about it, he is supposed to let everybody know. If the HOA is supposed to let anybody know. We are a full disclosure state, so it should not be hidden from you. However, if they are in the talks of something, or maybe something comes up down the road, maybe a hurricane comes through, and they didn't have enough reserves to pay for some sort of expense, or maybe there's new guidelines, like that's one big thing that's coming out now. There was apparently a condo that collapsed in South Florida somewhere, and because of that, they're re-looking at all the structures of all the other condos to make sure the same kind of stuff doesn't happen. So we are seeing a pretty big rash of special assessments happening, and a lot of them have been fairly small, $4,000 for the year, or $12,000 over the next 4 years and spread out, but sometimes they can be pretty high. There was a complex out here not too long ago that did 2 different assessments in a row. They were about 6 months apart. One was for for $87,000. The other one was for $18,000. And these condos were only in the $200,000 to $300,000 price range. So it's a pretty big increase. It's 1/3 of what you paid for the entire condo just for these repairs. So you need to know that that is always a possibility. Even some of the best condos with the best financials can have that. So it's always a good idea to make sure that you've always got access to a little extra money if you need to, because what happens with the people that couldn't or did not want to pay those assessments, they sold off the properties, but for a fraction of what they were worth, because the new owner was going to have to pick up that expense. And the fifth thing on my list is to make sure that you know exactly what the HOA covers, so that way you know what you need to cover. Some HOAs here in our area, in fact, most of the HOAs here in our area are going to cover things that most people wouldn't think about, like sewer, trash, and water, as well as building insurance. So this typically makes a lot of condos a lot cheaper in the insurance category, because you really only need what's called like an HO3 policy, just essentially renter's insurance as most people look at it. It's covering the stuff inside, because the stuff outside, or drywall to outside, the balcony, the doors, the windows, are generally covered by the HOA. Now, that's not true of all HOAs, and that's definitely not true of all HOAs in Florida. From what I've heard, actually, a lot of South Florida condos are way different than the ones we have up here in the Panhandle, where we're covering a little bit more stuff from what I've heard. But of course, I'm not sold down there, nor do I own one. And you also need to know about all of the hidden fees that might be included. Now, a lot of condos are very straightforward and they're very open. HOA covers everything. You cover this, this, and this, and it's done. But then others are trying to keep either the HOA fees down, or they have extra fees on top for extra amenities that they have. These are going to be different from every condo. There is no blanket statement with this. So you need to make sure that whenever you fall in love with a condo, or maybe a condo complex, and you're like, this might be the right one, you get all of that information so that you don't purchase something, move into it, or start vacation renting it out and find out it's not hitting the numbers that you need. And another thing to think about is, are you going to get involved in the HOA? Now, again, every condo is different, and not all of them are going to allow each and every one of the owners to have votes and rights and all of that. But for the most part in our area, it's pretty common that they do. And it kind of depends on your personality on whether or not you should get involved in the HOA. I think everybody that owns a condo should get involved in the HOA on some level, but I think some need to be distanced from it than others, because what does happen sometimes is you come in here and you see stuff that's messed up, so you decide you're going to become the vice president, the treasurer, the secretary, or any other upstanding person in the condo board, and then it just takes over your whole life because he said this and she said this, and so-and-so's playing their music too loud, and the vacation renters down the hall are being rowdy, and all this other stuff, and you're at the brunt of it. So if you're here just to relax and vacation, maybe you don't get involved too much, but make sure that you're still paying attention, so that if there are assessments coming up down the road, or if there are some sort of unforeseen things, that you know about them. Because if you don't, you're going to be at a massive disadvantage when all of a sudden you get a bill for $4,000 because of repainting the building. And number 8 on my list is a big one. It's try to figure out the numbers, the actual numbers of rental projection. One of the things that I have noticed is a really big kind of issue out here, and I imagine this is everywhere, is whenever a condo doesn't have near as good rental projections as others, they'll shop around and find different property management companies to give their projections based on what they see. And it's not all the time, but every once in a while somebody gives a pretty astronomical projection because they're trying to win the business. I don't think that's a good way to do it, because when you don't follow up with what you say you can get for the condo, I would imagine people are going to drop you pretty quick, and that word of mouth is going to spread. But it does happen. Sometimes I'll see something and I'm like, oh, it did $30,000 last year, but the rental projections say $76,000. Like, that's a really big jump in 1 year. What's going to happen differently? Now, there are certain things you can do to increase the rents. A lot of times longevity on the market really helps this stuff out. So if it's been a vacation rental for 5 years, a lot of times you have repeat customers. There are people that stay at the same condo the same time each year. They get done with their vacation, and on the last day they book it for the next year because they love it. People don't hate change, or don't like change rather. So they're doing the same vacation over and over. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's really good for the condo owner because it keeps that steadiness going. And they're paying whatever the market price is at the time, which is always generally increasing with inflation. And as I kind of already alluded to, is what else can you do to get those rental numbers up? Did the previous owner take too many owner days? Because that's a big one. Sometimes you'll see 2 condos in the same complex, same size, same view, same amenities, same prettiness inside, same aesthetic look, I guess is a more professional way to say it. And one of them is getting $15,000 less than the other one, $2,000 less, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 less. A lot of times that is just because of the longevity, but it could be owner days. It could be maybe they're letting too many family and friends stay. Maybe the prices aren't high enough. Maybe the prices are too high and people aren't renting that as much. There's a lot that goes into this stuff, and all of this stuff, most of it, I'm not going to say all of it, but most of it can be handled through your property manager. They should be able to kind of tweak this to get the numbers that you're looking for and maximize the amount of dollar that you're making. Number 10 is a common question we get asked and a very hot topic on this channel in general, and that's hurricanes. What do they look like when they come through? What do you need to know as being a condo owner? Every condo, again, is going to be different. I know I'm beating that dead horse. It feels like I'm saying it all the time, but it's true. Some of them are going to have people on staff that will come inside, close hurricane shutters, take stuff off the balconies, and just button everything up. And then others don't have that, and you've got to make sure that you get out there and do all of that for you. And now, most of the time, property managers in general are going to have some sort of option to at least take stuff off the balconies, if not the HOA. There's almost always somebody that's going to do that kind of stuff. But if you're in a complex that is primarily owner occupied, or there's just something going on with it where they don't have the same amenities, maybe it's a smaller complex, they just don't have the kind of funds that the bigger ones do, then it might be on you to make sure that you don't have stuff on your balcony that's just going to fly away and hit a neighbor. Oh, and I did mention that the insurance is generally covered. That's the same with this. A lot of people ask, hey, is homeowners insurance and hurricane insurance the same, or are they two different things? Here in Florida, they're actually the same. They call it wind coverage technically, but it is covered on all, well, not all, almost all condo complexes, and the amount that is covered kind of varies, and that goes into a whole little, road of stuff that I'm not going to get into in this video that's lender oriented, but it can make the lending a little bit harder to get if you are getting a loan for the complex. But most of them cover the guidelines that they need to in order to get a loan on the property. And speaking of that, I didn't actually have this on my list, but now that we're kind of talking about loans, there's one really important thing to mention, and that is having a loan officer that knows condos here in Florida. Your person up in Minnesota or New Jersey or Los Angeles, they don't know it. I promise you, they're going to screw it up. I don't care how much they tell you that they know what they're doing. I have never to date had a good sale from somebody outside of the area on a condo. Single family home, great. A lot of other townhomes, all that stuff, great. Condos, whole different ballgame. There is a lot going on, and if you don't have an experienced lender that knows condos and knows what the difference between a condo tel is, I'm not going to get into it, but there's a lot that goes on. That's my point. Back on track, my number 11 tip is the insurance. How much are you going to need? I know I kind of touched on this earlier. On most of them, it's going to be an HO3 renter's policy, which is going to be very inexpensive. I've seen it go as low as $300 per year, all the way up to about $1,400, $1,500. And then, of course, you start getting the $1 million properties, $5 million, even $10 million condos. Those, of course, are going to go up as that goes up because you're insuring more. But for the most part, in a $500 to $1 million range, you're going to see generally under $1,500 for your insurance, which is great because the HOA part of that fee that you're paying is covering a good portion of the building. All right, and taxes. Taxes are going to be different than what you're seeing in the tax roll. So when you are adjusting for that, keep that in mind that as soon as the property sells, the good old tax man is going to adjust it up based on the purchase price. So we're in an appreciating market right now, which means the taxes are only going to go up most likely every time you sell the property or every time you buy a new property. All right, 13 on my list are the property manager fees. They're high, okay? Anywhere from 10 to 35%. The most common number is 25%. And that should cover most of your expenses, your cleaning fees, VRBO fees, Airbnb fees, but they might not necessarily. They might take a smaller percentage, let's say 10%, but you pay all of those other fees separately. They're all going to work different. You need to find the property manager that's best for you. And if they have on-site management, I'll tell you this, most of the time, that is the way that you're going to want to go. It's much easier on your vacation renters to come straight to the condo, check out a key from a front desk, and then go right upstairs and start their vacation. Whereas if you're using an off-site one, it might not be that bad, but they might have to drive a mile or two down the road in order to check in and do all of that. And it's just a little bit less convenient. You'll typically, big air quotes there, typically get more money and more bang for your buck, more repeat customers when you're using the on-site management company. But sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Now, if you are not using a property manager, that is your your prerogative, but you're going to need to know that there are some marketing expenses that you're going to have to take care of. You need to get this property out there in order to make up that money. Now, the property management fees at 25%, they're pretty hefty, so sometimes you can manage it on your own and not rent it out as much, but you overall net more because you're not paying that outrageous fee. But then you're also going to be responsible for all the fees, like I said, Airbnb fees, VRBO fees, any marketing expenses, Google AdWords, Facebook ads, the website. You're going to need to build a website for it. We'll have a whole nother video on how to manage this on your own. That's coming down the pipeline as well. But it's a lot of extra stuff. And if you don't have experience with it, it could be a little bit daunting at first, but this is all stuff you can learn. So if you did not want to take that expense or that hit of a property manager, you could do it on your own. It's not really suggested in my opinion. Most people that I know, I've actually had 3 or 4 past clients that did try it. And one of them after about 4 months, they were like, nope. Another one after about 8 months, another after a year. You know, it starts to become a lot because you're scheduling cleaners and scheduling maintenance and you're doing everything yourself. And if the cleaner doesn't show up and now the place is a mess, your next renters are mad. They want their money back. They want you to pay for something else. It's just a little bit of a mess. Put that liability on somebody else is my personal suggestion. Unless, of course, you've got a lot of extra time. Then, well, why not? So the 15th thing I had on my list is exactly what we've just been talking about. It's a little bit redundant. It's just figuring out whether you're going to rent it yourself or if you're going to have a property manager do it. You can weigh the pros and cons. We've got Excel spreadsheets that'll kind of help you on the dollar side of things. So reach out to us if you need to do that. And by the way, if you have visited the Emerald Coast and you're still paying attention here, I would love for you to comment which area that you have visited in the past. I'd really like to kind of see where everybody's been before. All right, number 16, does the condo have repeat customers? Do they have snowbirds that come in every year? This can really off hedge your costs, right? If you're worried about that 4 and 5 month window where it's a little bit colder and you don't have snowbirds in here, it might be good to know that there are snowbirds. They've been coming down every year for 5 years. That's good stuff to know. And of course, equally as good to know that they've never had a snowbird in there, or that it does sometimes go through periods without being rented out. Outside of COVID, of course, there's nothing we could really do about that. Another thing to watch out for is your supplies. So these are your linens, your silverware, your pots, your pans, all of that stuff that's inside of the unit, plates, toasters, appliances, just all of it. They will break, they'll go missing. Sometimes they go missing on the beach. People, I kid you not, they will take your pots and pans, mainly the pots, and they'll take them out to the beach because they don't have sand toys and their kid's playing with it and just wants to, you know, this is my sandcastle maker. That happens all the time. Now, it's not rampant or anything like that, but you do need to account for a certain percentage or certain number every year to replace some of this stuff. Now, as far as your linens go, your bedding and all that great stuff, most of the management companies do that for you. So if you've got a management company, you shouldn't have to worry about it. In fact, even all of the extra stuff they should be handling for you if they are full service. But either way, I would account for anywhere from $65 to about $150 to replace that stuff every single year because it just slowly goes missing over time. Now, another thing you need to know is your condo is not always going to be perfect. People are moving into this. A lot of these, they're built with a narrow hallway. It depends on which stack in the condo you're in, which condo you're in, how it's built, how it's laid out. There's not a whole lot of them that open up into this wide open concept sort of feel. There are some, of course, but even those, the point with this is that people are coming in with their luggage. They're tired. They've been on a flight, then they were driving, or maybe they drove 4 or 5 hours, 8 hours, whatever. They're dragging their luggage in. They're going to ding your walls. It's not going to look the same every time you come and visit. You're going to notice little dings and scratches and dents. That's perfectly fine. Take some owner days out whenever you go down, and it's a tax thing. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then you paint the stuff up, get it back up to speed, but just know that minor damages are going to happen, and sometimes even bigger damages. Sometimes a drunk kid punches a hole in the wall or something like that. It's much more rare, but it does happen, so you need to account for that as well. All right, one of the things you have to figure out too is, are you going to be visiting the condo? If so, how much? Are you going to take owner days during prime days that you're going to lose a bunch of money on? You know, something that was grossing $50,000 per year. If you take out 4th of July week every year, that's probably going to be your biggest, that's probably 10 grand right there that you're losing out on. So you need to know that kind of stuff and then work your vacations either around them or just know that you're going to take a hit whenever you're visiting your own condo that way. It's very tempting a lot of of times, especially on some of these bigger weekends, Labor Day weekend, or really any weekend that might be like a 3-day weekend or just in general, and you don't see that it's booked a couple weeks out. So you go in there and you just book some owner days. It's very common. It's a temptation that you might want to do, but unfortunately they can charge a whole lot more if somebody tries to book it last second. But if your owner days are in there, there's not much they're going to be able to do. They can't kick you out, right? As soon as you say you want those spaces, they're yours. So you need to figure out how much you're going to be in there, because that really affects rental rates, and it can really make a big impact on the amount of money that your condo is or is not making for you. Now, number 20, I know I touched on it just a little bit. There are certain tax benefits that you can get. This is generally where a condo becomes make or break for some people. If you look at a condo on paper, like we're going to next week, we're going to break down every expense and go through an actual live example of one of our active condos right now, so that you can see where everything goes. A lot of times on paper, they don't look like a great investment in general. Sometimes they're just breaking even, especially if you have a mortgage on it. That's very, very common. Where you generally see the most benefit is if you're already visiting this place. Let's say you visit here twice a year, and each time you spend $6,000 for a week, and that's just the condo cost. And then you spend another $2,000 on travel expenses, flying down, driving down, what have you. Just rough number. $8,000 each trip. You do 2 of those a year. It's $16,000. If you're renting your own place, you might lose a little bit of income, but overall you're probably going to make most of that up. And then you can generally, this is where it's like a blanket statement, we're not giving any tax advice. You need to talk to your tax person. I don't know your situation. Things change also, but talk to your CPA about it, because a lot of times you can write those off as owner days as long as you're coming down to fix things in the condo. So you can actually do a vacation, in quotes, but a real vacation, but spend an afternoon getting new furniture for it, or repainting the walls because of the dings that we were mentioning before. And then from that point on, a lot of your expenses could possibly be written off. And I got to be very careful with all the tax stuff. I don't want anybody jumping down my throat if that stuff doesn't happen for their tax situation, but there are some things that could be put in place to make that really beneficial for you. And then another big consideration you need to figure out is, where exactly do you want to purchase your condo? Yeah, sure, saying I want to buy a condo is great, but what do you like to do? Do you like tennis? Well, we've got several tennis clubs that's what the whole building's about. It's just tennis. They just love tennis. There's other ones that are centered around golf. There's other ones that are centered in gigantic resorts where you've got a little bit of everything. And then of course there's smaller ones. If somebody wants to be a little bit off the beaten path, or maybe they want to know their neighbors, they want to be in a small 10 unit complex. There's lots of different options, and then the area that you purchase is all going to be completely different. People know most of our area is known from Pensacola, Panama City, and Destin. Those three, Pensacola, Destin, and then Panama City. I guess we're looking at it on a map. Hopefully I did that right for the camera being flipped. But you get my point. Those are the 3 big ones. But we've also got other areas that have condos as well. You've got Fort Walton Beach, Navarre. You've got 30A, Miramar, Sandestin. There's a ton of different places. You really need to figure out which personality is right for you. A more laid-back personality is going to be in one area versus a little bit more active. Like maybe you want to be active lifestyle. You want to be biking and jogging every single day. Well, 30A is a fantastic place for that. Whereas jogging down Holiday Isle in Destin is still very viable. You can definitely do all of that, but it's just not as built into the culture. With Holiday Isle and Destin, it's actually, there's a lot of people walking and stuff, but again, it's not near as much as in 30A. So you want to match what you're looking for to the condo that you're in the surrounding area. Bouncing back a little bit to the loan portion of everything, a lot of people get really surprised whenever they're buying a vacation condo that they can't do this for 10% very often. Now, there are rare exceptions, and every once in a while a product will come out where you can do something like that. But typically, if you don't want to pay PMI and high expenses, you're going to have to put at least 20% down, and sometimes it's even higher than that. A lot of times it's 25, 30. I've even seen up to 40% down for an investor, primary investor loan. And a lot of it's going to determine on the building that you're in, because some of them don't carry as much insurance. So the bank doesn't want to take that extra risk. So maybe they're only carrying an 80% basically capacity of what their condo's worth. It's worth $10 million. They're insured for $8 million. Well, in that case, they don't want to take that extra 20% risk. They're going to pass that on to you in the form of putting more down payment. So just keep that in mind. A lot of people come down, they think, oh, I'm going to put 10% down and and they try to go condo shopping and then find out that's not generally the case. And again, I've got to say it one more time. If your person outside of this area says that they can do it for 10%, it could be possible. I've just not had good luck with it. That's just what I'll say. So take that risk as you will. And on that same subject, interest rates are generally going to be higher for this. So you're not going to see that 2.99 that you found on your single family home. You're not going to see the 2.5 VA loan and be able to do that on a condo. Although you can buy some condos on the VA loan. That's a whole different ballgame. You can also do some FHA as well. But this isn't about that. This is mainly about just a condo in general. The interest rates are generally going to be higher, especially if you're buying it as an investment as your primary and you're not going to be owner occupied. Or if you're renting it out more than 14 days a year, there's a lot of little stipulations and rules, but it just kind of depends on how much you're going to use it and what kind of loan that you're getting. And on that same subject, since this is the last time we're going to touch on the loan, a lot of times you'll need a more creative loan. A standard conventional isn't going to purchase certain condo complexes. Sometimes you'll need what's called a portfolio loan or hard money. Loan meaning it's staying inside the bank. The bank is actually the one funding it. So you'll see this a lot at like community banks and things like that. But just note that a normal conventional might not be enough. An FHA might not, VA might not be enough. I mean, there's a lot of different products out there, and that's why going with a professional here that has all the products in front of them can help you make the best decision whenever you say, whew, that's the one. I'm in love. I want that condo. Let's do it. And on top of the costs of normal interest rate and percentage down, your closing costs are typically a little bit higher. Although this isn't normally high enough to really warrant anybody to be alarmed, but there are a lot of times some extra expenses that the lenders throw in there that they kind of need to, and some that they don't need to, but they charge more because it is a more difficult loan to close. So origination fees, underwriting fees, and things like that. But there's also other fees that are necessary, like estoppel fees. This is where they're basically telling one condo to, hey, this owner is going to take over. Let's stop the payment here. Where are they at? Who owes what money where, so that they can make everything make sense. All right, number 25 on my list, we are working our way down, is condo inspection. I notice a lot of people do not want to get them. Now, my insurance as a real estate agent tells me I have to tell you that you should, it doesn't say I have to, it says I should suggest that you get a home inspection or property condo inspection. I actually believe that. I'm not just saying that because my insurance likes me to do it. I still believe it. If you're going to spend 500 grand on a condo, $1 million, 200,000 even, $350, because that's what it costs. It's a little cheaper than doing a home loan because they're not inspecting the outside and the roof and all this other stuff. You know, $350 is well worth that peace of mind in general, in my opinion. Now, other people are more risk adverse than me and they're okay with it. What's going to go wrong? And that's going to cost the same amount as if a toilet breaks or something. You're absolutely right. I actually think for the long term of things, if you were to buy 100 condos over your life, you're going to lose money overall getting the home inspections. But for me, it's more of a peace of mind thing. I don't think $350 is worth knowing that maybe something is going to break on you right away and your first vacation is going to be spent trying to get a new toilet or an AC guy or, you know, whatever. And next on my list are the utilities. So I know I mentioned before that a lot of ours in the area cover water, sewer, trash. That's very common, but it doesn't normally cover electricity, your phone bill, internet sometimes, although phone and internet on a lot of condos are actually paid for. Sometimes you want to upgrade the internet. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe you want to get a couple more boxes because your condo's a little bit larger and you want to get good service no matter where you're at. There's a lot of different things that go into this. Just look at those ahead of time. They can be a little bit higher than normal, especially if you're renting the vacation condo out, because the renters want to crank down that AC. They really do. You know, they're out in the sun. It's 90 degrees. The sun's beating down on them. They want to come inside and cool off as quickly as possible. So it's not uncommon to walk into these things and it be cranked down to 65. I mean, even before I got into real estate, I used to work for a company that would help clean some of these condos, and I would run linens back and forth, pop into a new one to start the clean, drop all the linens off, and this thing feels like just ice in there. It's like 62 degrees. These people are really cranking it. So it does happen all the time. It's very common. So sometimes your electric bill is going to be pretty high. Now, that being said, is it high in the grand scheme of everything that you're already paying and the money that you're making from it and all that? No, not normally. 1,000 square foot condo, typically around $100 a month. It's not that crazy. But $100 a month for a 1,000 square foot, 2-bed, 1-bath home, if you've ever lived in something like that, would probably seem pretty high to a lot of people that keep their air at a decent level. All right, number 27, only 3 more to go. Almost did 2, but no, 3 more to go, is repair costs. You are going to have to repair things. I know I kind of mentioned the dings and dents, but You know, toilets are going to leak. They're going to need to replace. Sometimes carpet's going to need to be done. ACs are going to have to swapped out. ACs, this is a big one. This catches a lot of people off guard. Check out on your condos where the air conditioning unit is at. A lot of them are on the roofs because for insurance purposes, the lower that machinery is, the higher the insurance is going to be because they use, I can't remember the exact name off the top of my head, but they use basically a system saying what's the floor, the lowest floor that there's any machinery on. So whenever they're doing the flood elevation certificate and the insurance, that's one of the things that they're looking at. So they put a lot of them on the roof because it's better. What if we flood? I mean, we're right against the coast. It's not uncommon if we get hit directly with a hurricane. There's going to be a lot of water. So why I'm saying that is because when you need to get an AC replaced on some of these, just getting it worked on is one thing, but to get it down, a lot of them don't have access to just throw this thing on an elevator. There's not a big enough elevator for it. So what do you have to do? You have to order a crane. Now, what I have heard is you generally get with the HOA and say, hey, I've got to replace my AC. I'm ordering a crane anyway. Does anybody else want to co-share and swap theirs out? You know, kind of co-share that price. So if the crane's $1,200 for the day, and you got 4 other people involved, now it's not as big of a hit of you paying $1,200 plus the $3,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever it is to replace your air conditioning unit or units. Some of them do have plural units. And on top of that, there's other repair costs you've got to consider because things are just going to break over time. Some condo complexes are going to have maintenance people on staff, and that's going to make it easier and or sometimes free if it's minor stuff. You know, you just need some new light bulbs or some extra stuff tidied up, just some standard stuff that kind of breaks during the standard vacation rental period of things. A lot of times that's completely covered because some complexes are big enough to have maintenance staff, fully funded, staffed, like everything. It's part of the HOA. But not all of them do. So you've got to keep that in mind. And a lot of places are going to charge a little bit extra because it is a condo, because they've got to work around the condo to do things. So like if you're replacing flooring, they're only going to a lot of condos are only going to let you do it during a certain period. So these are just little things that you need to think about as you keep going forward with your thought process of buying a condo. And this kind of goes right into everything I was saying, maintenance in general, the overall maintenance of the property. If you've got it on a vacation rental program, I kind of touched on it a second ago, the light bulbs, little leaky faucets, all that stuff, for the most part, should be covered in your rental fees. But again, not always. So just keep that in mind. And the last thing that I have that catches a lot of people off guard as well are the furnishings. So a lot of the condos that you're going to buy out here are going to be fully furnished, but maybe you walk in and you're, I don't like this wicker furniture, or I don't like this gray couch. I want it to be blue. I want to repaint the thing. I want to do it, what have you. Whatever you want to do, those furnishings are now completely on you. I will suggest that in your living space, you have a pull-out couch. A lot of people will take a pull-out couch away because a lot of them are not super pretty, or it's not the same style they want. They'll take them out and they're going to lose rentals that way, because in the condo rental space, it's about heads and beds. That's what we call it. I know it's a cute little rhyme, whatever, but that's what the entire name of the game is about. So if you can have a spot to throw a teenage kid or something like that, the parents don't want to pay for a 3-bedroom or don't want to pay for a 2-bedroom, and this is a 1-bedroom, that gives them the option to have a spot for the kid to sleep, or maybe another couple, or just maybe they've got a friend in the area that's going to be on their vacation for 1 or 2 of the days. Like, there's just so many options that versatile pull-out bed can help with. And then of course, if you can cram beds inside of a smaller closet, like you'll see some of that on Okaloosa Island. You'll see it everywhere, but there's several condos that are pretty popular for it in Okaloosa Island, right here in Fort Walton Beach, or they'll have the bunk rooms right in the hallway. They'll just be this cutout where like closet should probably go, but they put 2 bunk beds because it's long enough. You'll see stuff like that all the time because it's all about heads and beds. Now, with all the furnishings and stuff, that's all up to you. We do have condo furnishing places here that's all they do. So if you need a condo size fridge, because some of them are smaller than others, not all, but some of them are, you've got that. You've got condo size furniture in general, smaller couches, sometimes bigger couches and normal size couches. And they've got a ton of them, but you can outfit it however you want. My suggestion, however, is if you're using this as primarily as a rental, don't put your heart and soul into the furniture unless you're okay with it getting demolished. It's going to get demolished much faster. People don't take care of your stuff near as much as you take care of your stuff. So hopefully you found this helpful. Go ahead and hit that like button if you did. And again, if you missed it earlier, comment down below where at on the Emerald Coast that you have visited before. We love chatting with you guys. If you'll notice on any of our past videos, if you talk to us, we're talking back. We absolutely love it. So comment down below and just let us know. Anyway, see ya.